Hello, and welcome to the Eugene Real Estate Podcast. I am your host, Vince Casey. This is the first podcast devoted entirely to the Eugene real estate market, where every month we bring on local experts to discuss current trends to help us navigate the ever-changing landscape that is real estate. The Eugene Real Estate Podcast is now sponsored by House to Home Construction. House to Home Construction. Love where you live. This month, we bring legendary real estate agent Barbara West out of retirement to discuss the keys to listing presentation. When Barbara was in her prime, she was, in my opinion, the top agent in Lane County. She is an absolute authority on listing presentation. Barbara, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Vince. Very kind words. Thank you.
Oh, of course. So how has retired life been treating you?
Well, it's really in many ways great. I stopped doing real estate at the beginning of the pandemic, so that was a real adjustment the first year. And I get to see my grandchildren a lot, and I get to not have all that urgency and crazy deadlines. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I'm always curious, what was it about Alice Holmes that made you comfortable kind of handing over the keys to her, to the business and everything over there at Windermere?
Well, we worked together for 3 years, and we had a very similar style, and we shared values. I thought she would be the one. Other people wanted my business, of course, but I thought Alice would be one who matched and would give them the service that I gave them. And people have really liked working with Alice. I've had great feedback. So it's turned out to be a really good decision.
Yeah, I live a couple doors down from her, so I'm a little bit biased as well, but I love Alice to death, and I think you made a great decision there.
Yeah.
Well,
it's important to me that my clients be well cared for. And so that was one of my big criteria.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes a lot of passion in this business, and I'm sure that's part of your success. So part of the reason I brought you on the show today started with a conversation we had about 7 years ago in the hallway at Windermere. I had started helping an investor remodel properties, and we were all hot and heavy on finding trending colors that would help sell properties. And during this time, everything was gray. Gray exteriors with white trim, gray interiors with white trim. And when I stopped you in the hallway, you gave me some great feedback that I've held on to this day. You said, Oregon is gray enough. Why add to it? You suggested a medium body green color for the exterior that was a top seller at Benjamin Moore. And you also suggested a buttercream yellow for the interior. And you even gave me the name of an interior designer to sit down and do a consult with. Later, I did an open house for you, and the interior color was that buttercream yellow. And I felt like I was in a sun-drenched room, and I could actually feel the endorphins manufacturing in my brain. And it was in that moment that I was like, wow, this woman really knows what she's talking about. And to this day, I show houses that have left your footprint on them. And, I really think to myself that Barbara has changed the aesthetic of Eugene.
Thank you.
Do you remember that color of green or the name of it?
I don't exactly. And I think gray. I have always thought that if I lived in Arizona, I'd be more open to the color gray. But, and I know it's trendy, but interestingly enough, my son and daughter-in-law did a kind of a gray green. I know it sounds weird, but it's a beautiful color in their house when they bought it 9 or 10 years ago when I helped them redo their house before they moved in. And they just realized it was depressing in the winter, and we just painted it all pretty light white, little cream in the white. And it looks wonderful and it's fresh. And so even though they chose that initially, they feel better in the wintertime with their new colors. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense, that just a little bit of yellow in the paint goes a long way to sort of manufacturing sunlight.
Yes.
Well, now that we know that you know your stuff let's say you have a client that is ready to list their property. What kind of advice are you giving them before they get started putting their house on the market?
So I did real estate for 23 years, and I realized today I was thinking about it 27 years ago. So when I started, I had a background in design and graphics, and I've always been committed to beauty and helping there to be more beauty in the world. And I looked at homes and I realized we often would detail our cars if we were going to sell them, right?
Right.
But people back then, especially, did not detail their homes. And so I started doing that, helping them, yes, power wash, yes, do some landscaping. And I had a whole bunch of people that I could just call in and my clients could use them to get things done quickly. And I had cleaners and it just, because I'd have clients once in a while, I'd take them out looking at properties, buyers, and we would drive up to a home and they wouldn't even want to go in because of the outside impression, right? They crossed it off their list. And so the more something could look spiffy and ready to go, that was going to help the first impression. The research is we make all our decisions in 5 seconds of meeting people or seeing things. So you just have 5 seconds with that first impression when people drive up. And people either begin to decide they're not going to buy this house and discount it, or they begin to think it could be a possibility. And so I wanted my clients to have that view. The buyers have the view of their house. It's a possibility. This could be the one. And I always had a thought, I always use the phrase, what can we do to a house and a property so that the most people can say yes to it? And that was always how I looked at homes. And I just had things, not expensive usually, but just things that could be done that made a huge difference. One time I had a house that was cream color on the outside, but it had kind of a pink trim. And it just cheapened the house. And it was on the Oakway Golf Course. It was a very nice home, very contemporary, but the pink trim just was really off-putting. So we got a bid. It wasn't that expensive. The painters came in a day, painted all the trim, made a huge difference, and that house sold in a few days. It might have with the pink trim, but it might not have. So we just removed an objection. So
Yeah, everybody's got a personal style, but once you get to the market, you want to appeal to that broader audience and get a more neutral base in there for sure. What color did y'all end up going with?
it was just a darker cream color. It was very neutral, and it was a contemporary house. So most of the trim got painted the house color because it was contemporary, and it made it look just simple and clean and oh, so much more expensive. So I think, my clients routinely would get, I think, 10 to 40,000 more for their homes. And and appraisers would document that. They would come to me and say, Barbara, you make us work a lot harder because you get these prices for listings. And really, most buyers want to buy a staged home.
That is true. That actually leads me right into my next question. I know you're a big fan and you've been staging homes for a while. Can you emphasize how important staging is for clients, and maybe somebody's on the fence about whether they want to spend the extra money? What's the good reason to go ahead and pay that extra expense for staging?
Well, since I was in real estate for 23 years, I went through different markets. They weren't always the hot market that we've gone through recently, right?
Right.
So, so I think staging made it that my homes, my clients got offers even in a hard market, and they got higher offers in a good market. And so I think staging is really important, because I think when you put photos on the internet and a house is vacant, it's really hard to get proportion, and it doesn't look very interesting. And so I had 5 households full of furniture, and I would stage all my homes at no cost to my clients. So that was very attractive to them. And I think, staging is just how you really get a great sale for your client.
What would you say to somebody that is just going to say, oh, we'll do virtual staging for our pictures and we'll save some money?
Well, I think the issue is I always would stage and have my photos taken by a professional photographer in such a way that when people came and opened the door, it matched what they thought they were going to see. I never wanted people to walk in the door and say, oh, this is so much worse than where did Barbara get those photos? Or this is so much better than the photos. I didn't want either of those spectrums. I wanted people to have a congruency to what I presented and how they felt when they walked through the door. And I think with virtual, it's great, except people walk through the door and it looks totally different. It's like a buzzkill in a way. I don't know why I'm using that word, but it's just like nothing's there. And so you might get people in the door. And the other thing is, if you have a house, I worked a lot with higher end homes and many homes that were built by clients as their dream home. Well, some of them had very kind of quirky, challenging spaces that it wasn't clear how to use those spaces. So staging would help people understand how that space could be used. It made sense of the space, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And when I showed homes, people often, even if it wasn't the floor plan that I thought fit them best, they would choose, I'd say, which home would you buy today? And it was often the staged home.
Yeah, I used to stage my homes when I was working with Bob. He owned a bunch of furniture, and it's something that I miss a lot. It was something that I was pretty passionate about, so I'm looking forward to being able to get back into that soon.
And you don't need a lot of things. You can have simple things. I always had things that looked simple, but looked expensive, right? And sometimes I would change out people's art. They would be living there, and I would just change out all their art. I had one couple, and they had very angst art. Like you should have a glass of wine and talk about it,
Right.
And their house was not sold. And so they decided to hire me to sell it. And I walked in, I didn't say anything. And they looked at me, I looked at them, and they said, you want us to take down all our art, don't you? And I said, yeah, I do. And I put up my art, which was nice looking, but not original and, simple. And I sold the house in 2 days. And they had told me in that process when I put up my art, they said, we don't like any of your art, Barbara. And I said, I understand that you don't like any of my art. But let's see what happens. And I sold the house in 2 days. And then they said to me, Barbara, we really like your art. So we had this kind of funny thing. And, sometimes I'd stage people's homes a few times in my career and they didn't want to sell. They'd call me and say, it looks so great, we're not selling it, Barbara.
Oh, wow. That's when you do your job too well.
It was okay. It was okay for me.
Yeah. So what type of art did you hang? Was it just sort of modern art with the colors, or was it very neutral?
It had colors. I think that I've always thought staging and preparing a house for market, when you make it more modern and contemporary, it's going to appeal to more people. So a lot of clients, if a house has wallpaper and antiques, they can't see beyond that. And so they just discount the house and don't think of it as a possibility for them. So I would always try to remove antiques and paint wallpaper. I know that sounds crazy, but my painters had a way to do it. So it was just a cream, simple. We weren't hiding that we did painted wallpaper, but it became a simple palette versus lots of little flowers. It wasn't none of it was contemporary, cool wallpaper that's available today.
Right. Well, let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about listing photos. I know you talked about like people usually decide within 5 seconds of they want to go see a property. Usually people fall in love with the house online before they see it in person. And in order to do this, you have to have a great listing photographer. I'm real fortunate. I have a secret weapon in Brian Abbey from Northwest Listing Photography. He just moved here from Seattle, and I'm really blessed to have found him. What are some of the main things that you found important throughout the years of getting great photos of your listing?
Well, staging helps because then you have something to photograph, right?
Right.
Um, I mean, photographing vacant rooms is not easy in most homes, right? And I think the other thing is the order of your photographs is really important. Just for fun yesterday, because I don't do this anymore because I'm not an active realtor, I went through and I looked at some listings, and I looked at $1 million listing, and, it would, that house would present so much better if the realtor reordered the photos, because the first 5 photos are the most important ones to me. We would look and find the 5 best shots we had, and that's what we would put on, because that's the attention span barely of someone searching for a house, right?
Right.
And these photos were of the outside and the backyard and the tool shed, and just a missed opportunity in those first photos. And then the photos weren't done from very good angles, and kind of shot with, instead of at an angle, all the rooms. I can't explain this very well. My hands are moving as I'm talking, but it's not working. Um, so, so like there's a little bathroom, and they just stood in the doorway and shot it, right? And it just looks like a 1.5 feet wide. So anyway, I think how you do it, and then also I always stage for the photos. How's this going to look on the internet? That's how I always did it. So,
Yeah. Were you ever a big fan of doing twilight photos or getting aerial photos or videos?
we did a lot of drone shots. Yeah, we did a lot of drone, especially country properties. And I was always looking for the first shot as a good one. So once in a while, that was a drone shot. I had a really expensive house in Valley River, and it had a really small profile on the street because the lot was kind of like pie shaped and got bigger as you went back. And so it just looked like a tiny home, very expensive tiny home. So I went around the back, and the back was beautiful, and the back of the house, and I took away the barbecue and things that made it look like the back of the house, right? And shot it and sold it right away. And I don't think I would have if I'd used that front photo. So we were always trying to get, I didn't exactly have photographers hanging out of trees, but we were always trying to get the best angle and shot for something.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. You mentioned curb appeal a little bit earlier. Was there any go-to moves whenever you were presenting the front of a property? Like, would you go out and get a pallet of flowers to plant in the garden, or did you just hire a landscaper and pressure wash the front, or what was your go-to move there?
Well, I'd have the windows, I'd have clean windows. That was always the thing. I often would paint the front door black, depending on the house color. I had a gorgeous house up above the university. They were putting on market in January, and it had a wood front door that had not been taken care of. So it didn't look great. We could not refinish it. It was January. I painted it black, and it looked fabulous on the house. So there's quite a bit of research out there about black doors being very good for the sale.
Well, I'll keep that one in my back pocket. Thank you.
I know. And then I would just have landscapers or gardeners come in and do flowers, and just tidy is the word that comes to me. It just needed to look tidy and cared for as people came in. And then I'd look at the roof, and sometimes we'd replace the roof before we went on market when we knew it was an issue and going to have to be replaced for the 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 sale, because that's a really bad look to drive up and something really needs maintenance and it hasn't been taken care of. Then buyers start questioning, well, what else haven't that I can't see have they not taken care of? So
Yeah. Do you encourage your sellers to do a pre-inspection, or is it kind of a case-by-case basis?
yeah, it just would depend on the house, and yeah,
Okay.
not always.
Do you have a favorite time of year to list? Did you encourage your clients to list like right in the beginning of March, or is there anything to that?
Yes, that's pretty true, Vince. That was a good guess. So there's some houses in Eugene I consider are not good winter homes. So a lot of the homes in the trees and that don't get light are not. I don't think they should go on in the winter, right? There's some homes in Eugene that get a lot of light, and that's possible if somebody needs to do that. If I have my druthers, it's March or April, and because then you're a little ahead of the market. Most the biggest employer in Lane County is education. So when school's over, there's a lot of turnover, right?
Right.
So I think it's better not to have as much competition.
Yeah, I think so many people wait for their azaleas and their rhododendrons to pop before they want to go on to market. And if you can just kind of get ahead of that curve, that seems to be the sweet spot.
Yes, and I ask them if they have photos of those flowers, and then I blow up I enlarge the photos, and I make a display in the house of what the plants are going to look like when we're farther along in the year.
Very smart.
Yes, and that helps them move on from that point if I have to have all my flowers blooming.
Well, it definitely sounds like your sellers listened to you and your clients respected everything you had to say. What about pricing? Do you have any strategies with price that you like to use when you're on the market?
Well, I think I always went towards the high side. I was always, if you look at a spectrum of price, I was always more on the pushing price a little bit. Not in a crazy way, but I was always up there because the house would look great and be clean and all of that and ready to go. And I listed really kind of special, nice homes a lot. So I could do that.
Yeah, since apps like Zillow and Redfin have gotten popular, I think a lot of companies are pushing bridge pricing where you land right on a bridge like 500 or 550 or 600. So people that are using their search parameters will always land on it, whether they're looking 450 to 550 or 550 to 600.
Yes.
And that's been something that's popular lately. Is that a strategy that you kind of endorse as well?
Well, it isn't what I needed to use because the search engines weren't as powerful until kind of the end of my career. So I think that sounds wise. So, I mean, I used everything I thought that worked that would help my clients. That was kind of my strategy that, and of course, ethical and legal, but I would try anything that I thought or heard about that I thought would be the best thing for my clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
but I wouldn't price something at, excuse me, I kind of interrupted you, but I wouldn't price something as, if somebody wanted to price their home at 505, I would do my best to bring it down to 5 or 495 or somewhere in there. Cause I always felt like that extra 5 was maybe, expensive money, like maybe your sale wouldn't be quite as good. And now, of course, multiple crazy bidding. I mean, there's a whole new world that's happened. So maybe it doesn't matter as much.
Yeah, well, we're starting to get back to the point where it matters. With rates going up, I've definitely noticed activity, especially in that mid-range, tends to soften a little bit, but I definitely agree with trying to get it on the 5 or 499, trying to get it right under that that bridge right there where more people can maybe have access to it.
Yeah. I think that always worked for me. So,
well, that's all the questions that I had written down for us today. Is there anything that comes to your mind that we haven't really talked about that future sellers should know about?
Just that by packing early and staging and doing those kinds of things, it takes energy. But all my clients, once they packed early, if they were still living in their house when it went on market, they all thanked me because they don't know how they would have ever packed all at once. So by the time they packed early to stage the house, then they had most of their piles of clutter were gone and taken care of. So the whole move was much easier.
Oh, such a great point. Yeah, I didn't even think about that when I was thinking about listing, but
you have to pack anyway.
Yeah, I might as well, if you're not going to use it, just put it away.
Just put it away. And are you going to take it with you? And, and if you're not, then let's find a new home for it before we go on the market. One time, just a funny little story. I walked into a house and there were like 15 orchid plants with no blooms, not one bloom.
Wow.
Orchids without blooms, as far as I'm concerned, are not terribly attractive plants. I mean, I love orchids, but without blooms. So I asked him if he could find foster care for being on market. and the neighbor across the street took him. And that whole area of the house just looked so much better without orchid plants that weren't blooming. So that was just a funny little thing. I don't know why I thought of that, but anyway, I think that really being careful with how I want to go to this realtor who listed this $1 million property and say, let me help you. Let's reorder your photos. Let's take some new photos. I still have that in me. I want it to be better for other people also.
All right. You hear that, realtors? Barbara West is available for a consultation fee.
Well, I miss staging. I do it with my friends and I do it with my grandchildren, but I miss that part of it. It's fun. It was fun for me. So
yeah, there definitely is something very soothing about it. I enjoyed it as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Vince.
You're welcome. Well, that's all the time we have today. I know you're retired, but would you like to give a quick plug for your successor, Alice Holmes?
Yeah, Alice is really an extraordinary woman and really, I think, easy to work with. And she works super hard for her clients. And I have referred my dearest friends to Alice, and she's done a great job. And so I think that's the highest compliment I can give, because my friends would tell me if she hadn't. So I think she's just a really great person to work with.
Yeah, she's very sweet and motherly, and then she also has this aggressive side that she can use in negotiations that just comes out and surprises you. I'll never forget, I was during the hypermarket, I had a house that had about 13 bids on it, and Alice submitted her offer, and I pretty much knew within 5 seconds of opening it, I had my winning bid. I won't give anybody a peek behind the curtain of how she did that, but let's just say it was very impressive.
Yes, I have an idea of how she did that.
I bet she learned it from you.
Yeah, well, no, I'm not saying that, but she's just very. If I was going to buy or sell a house, I would use Alice. How's that?
Oh, I like that. That's a great way to sum it up.
Not great, Vince, but I have a long relationship with Alice, and I would trust her to do a great job if I bought or sold a house. So
no offense taken. This is a business of relationships, and it sounds like y'all have a great one.
Yes, we do.
Well, folks, that's our show today. I'd like to give a big thanks to Barbara for coming on today. I'd like to thank our sponsor, House to Home Construction. And I'd like to thank Patty Rose for producing the show. And I'd like to thank all of you for listening. Next month, we bring on Christian Fox and Rob Cohen to discuss commercial real estate and play the first ever Eugene Real Estate Podcast drinking game. Good night, and we'll see you next time.
If you have a question for the show, feel free to email us at eugenerealestatepodcast@gmail.com. If you would like to work with Vince Casey as a buyer or seller, please email him at vincecaseyrealestate@gmail.com. Be sure to mention this podcast with House to Home Construction to receive up to $500 off any roof bid from a competitor in writing.